Not allowing a child to use puberty blockers is simply just transphobic. It just is what it is. Well, this one done really been making its rounds on Beyonce's internet, honey. And there seems to be a certain demographic of people who just can't seem to understand nuance. Anybody under 16, this conversation is not regarding them. I think some of y'all also tend to forget that 16 years old is still a child. Any medical professional will tell you that for a child to even be considered for puberty blockers, they must show a long history, an intense history of gender dysphoria. This usually will include suicidal ideation. So children who are eligible for puberty blockers are usually children who are suicidal. Let's keep that in mind as well. These are not just children running around playing dress up. These are children who are genuinely considering taking their own lives, and they usually have a plan in place. There are risky side effects with hormone blockers, as they are with any pharmaceutical medications. You know how commonly we watch those commercials that advertise medicines, and one of the side effects is death? Hormone blockers are no different, but big pharma is a whole nother conversation. The risks that come along with hormone blockers are bone density, bone growth, sexual organ, and fertility issues. I recommend waiting until at least 16 because that lowers the chances of a child being infertile or inoperable as an adult. However, for a lot of people, they're willing to take these risks. There are a lot of trans people who end up becoming infertile and inoperable in adulthood anyway. For a lot of people, they'd rather be infertile and passable versus being infertile and having trouble passing in society and getting things like jobs and housing and a social life. Something I think a lot of parents don't realize about puberty blockers is that puberty blockers were not made for trans people. Puberty blockers were made for kids who suffer with CPP, central precocious puberty. That's when a child has a hyperpituitary gland and or hypothalamus that causes a really quick early onset of puberty. Those are the people that puberty blockers were made for, and those are the people that puberty blockers are most commonly used on. Approximately 1 in 6,000 children who are not trans receive puberty blockers as a form of treatment for their early onset in puberty. Basically, this means that most of the kids who are taking puberty blockers aren't trans. They're your cisgender children.
It's so sad because now you have, obviously, Lupron is the puberty blocker. Now you have the FDA saying, it causes brain swelling and this and that. It's like...
That's right.
Well, that's just not true. Here's a list of some of the other puberty blockers that are available for children. Thousands of children over decades have taken puberty blockers. And this whole time, only 6 have ever had issues with brain swelling. These same 6 kids who had issues with brain swelling also had other conditions that they were being treated for and other medications that they were taking. The children were also between the ages of 5 and 12. But again, I recommend puberty blockers for people 16 and older, maybe a little earlier in rare special occasions. You probably hollering at your phone asking me, well, Bre, why would they want to start this narrative that puberty blockers are more harmful than they really are? It's election year, honey. They're trying to distract y'all. They're trying to get y'all to hop on the hate trans bandwagon. They've been trying to stop healthcare for trans kids. This ain't nothing new. Don't nothing change in this country, including the old white men who run this motherfucker. At any point while using puberty blockers, a child can stop.
And then what?
Well, after that, a child becomes an adult and they decide whether they want to further their transition or whether they want to live their life as their gender assigned at birth.
Do you have children? I do.
Right. Have you ever met a child?
Have you ever met a child? Are you around children?
No, I've never met a child, never seen a child, never been a child. I have no idea what children even are.
And I coach soccer. I'm around all of these kids. Not one of them are trans, by the way.
Well, again, Buck, trans people are very rare, and you weren't around me as a kid because as a kid I was a whole trans queer, and it was quite obvious. But I'm very grateful that my parents wouldn't allow me being around the likes of you growing up, because I'd be a very lost queer right now if I viewed somebody like you as a role model. And honestly, I'm a little concerned about all of the kids who you're around because you're normalizing sex work for them. Personally, I wouldn't want my kids to have a porn star as a role model. But that's just me. Buck, you're a white male conservative baby boomer who happens to be a transgender adult model. Nothing you say matters to me, because your whole identity makes no damn sense.
It's healthy to have orgasms. It's an important part of growing as an adult, understanding your body.
There are plenty adult cisgender women who haven't experienced the orgasm. Both of y'all weird as hell, concerned about a child's future orgasms more than their contentment in living in their own skin. But that's the kind of people y'all are, aren't you?
But you passed amazing, and you didn't have any puberty blocker.
Katie, you might not have had any puberty blockers, but you've had enough surgery to make up for it. Now, that's the whole point of puberty blockers, so that the girls don't have to go under the knife as many times as you. You need to stop sitting on the table. Personally, you looking like a blow-up doll.
And then second of all, it's like there's a problem when you have to have consent explained to you over and over again. Because there's another group of people who always have to have consent explained to them when it comes to children. Yeah. And I don't really think you want to be compared to those people. That's right. But if you keep this up, we have to compare you.
Y'all should be a fucking shame to even mention me in the same sentence as a child predator. The blow-up doll and the porn star is comparing the psychologist to a child predator. I ain't never even walked a stroll, unlike you whores. So who's closer to the damn predator? Just because a person is trans doesn't mean that they can't have transphobic views and perspectives. And just because a person is trans doesn't mean that they know everything about the biology of transitioning. Me included. But anything I don't know, I'm going to find out. And I wouldn't purposefully steer y'all in the wrong direction ever. I stand 10 toes in my stance that a parent who wouldn't allow their depressed, trans, 16-year-old child to take puberty blockers, when in actuality, the child between the ages of 14 and 16 are already taking medications that are likely more harmful to them than puberty blockers. A lot of those harmful medications includes antidepressants. But if a child is depressed because of their gender dysphoria, then why not try and cure the gender dysphoria? Now, let's not mention how quick a lot of parents are to put their 16-year-old daughter on birth control, when in actuality, birth control is just another form of hormone treatment that could result in infertility. And remember, this discussion isn't even a consideration for children who aren't suicidal regarding their gender identity. And in those cases, the only real choice we have is the child taking their own life or the medical side effects.